So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Veghte, and I'm Research Director at Social Security Works. Participating in today's call, in addition to myself, are Representative Raúl Grijalva, representing Arizona's 3rd Congressional District, and Mitch Slater of the Iowa Alliance for Retired Americans. As part of this call, Social Security Works is releasing a fact sheet showing how restoring the minimum wage would strengthen Social Security protections for low-wage workers and improve the system's finances. After the call, you'll be able to find our research at our website, socialsecurityworks.org. Over the last 4 decades, income inequality has been eating away at the American social fabric and weakening Social Security's finances. It is a core American value that those who work hard and play by the rules not be left to live or retire in poverty. For this reason, nearly 7 in 10 Americans support raising the minimum wage. They believe that government has a role to play in shaping the rules of the game so that hard work is rewarded with a degree of economic security and dignity. We have 3 illustrious speakers on the call today to talk about the importance of restoring the minimum wage to America's low-income families and how doing so would also strengthen these families' Social Security protections. After all participants have spoken, we'll be happy to take your questions. Once the speakers have concluded, to ask a question, all you have to do is press star 6. Doing so will not work until after the speakers have concluded. Our first speaker is Representative Raúl Grijalva, who represents the people of Arizona's 3rd District. He is co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he is one of the top champions in Congress in the fight to protect and expand Social Security, and is also a leader in the fight to restore the minimum wage. Representative Grijalva?
Thank you very much, Ben, and I appreciate the invitation to be on this call with others who have also contributed greatly, as have yourself and the organization, to at the very minimum prevent and hold back some of the initial efforts that have occurred over the last 4 or 5 years, efforts to try to undermine and try to begin to undo Social Security as we know it, and replace it with a system that would not extend the retirement security to all Americans. And I at the initial comment is to thank you and to thank the organization for the fine work, the research, and the advocacy that you provided to all of us and to the American people and to Social Security recipients across these many fights that we've had here in Congress. And we're having this press call at a very appropriate time. The backdrop to this discussion today about the minimum wage and the sustainability and security that it provides Social Security by raising that minimum wage. The backdrop is the release of the Ryan budget, which continues on a path of that is already economically, fiscally, and morally, I might add, been proven to be a disastrous path for the American people, and that is an austerity budget that continues to cut, that continues to privatize portions of Medicare, that continues to work toward that change CPI for Social Security, that does not address the minimum wage, that in fact the tax breaks continue to be going to the upper 1 or 2%, and corporate welfare relief continues to be extended in terms of tax breaks and subsidies, and more importantly, defunds the Affordable Care Act and changes Social Security entirely. And I mention all these things because that's the backdrop. The backdrop is to take away from the American people the earned benefits that they've accrued over a lifetime of work, or a consequence of disability that is not of their making, a consequence of a retirement that doesn't fully complement what they need. And it's interesting because the purchasing power of the minimum wage is still at 1968 levels, which that $7.25 would now have to be $9 plus, $9.40, $9.50 in order to just meet the 1968 purchasing power that the minimum wage had. So you compound that with the fact that this increased income disparity and wage inequality in this country continues to grow, and the Ryan budget continues that pathway of inequality. And you see why the shortfall in Social Security is created by the fact that people are not sustaining that trust fund to the levels that they used to be in the past. Even people that are working 40 hours a week, 40% of them have dependent children that are on minimum wage. These are not teenagers looking for a career step. The vast majority, are working folks, adults with dependents, with families that they have to sustain, and yet what they make on a 40-hour week still qualifies them for SNAP, rental assistance, housing, and other safety net programs that are in this country. And so you see the double-edged sword of the Ryan budget. Cut those programs, change them and privatize those programs, do not give that support, and yet do not address the issue of minimum wage at all. That's the backdrop for this discussion. And raising the minimum wage is good for those families. Raising the minimum wage is good for the security and the enhancement of Social Security as we know it. And as we go forward, I think tying this, and I think it is very important, tying the issue of retirement, Social Security trust fund, and its stability to the minimum wage, I think is absolutely critical, so that the American people begin to see that this is not just an issue of the minimum wage being raised, which it should be, but it is also an issue with many dimensions. And one of those dimensions is retirement. One of those dimensions is the fiscal health of the trust fund and Social Security, and the contributions that people make toward their retirement. If people retire after 20, 30 years, 40 years of work as minimum wage workers, the benefits they would receive from Social Security at the present rate that we're at would still leave them below the poverty line. But that's the sad commentary of the reality now of the inequality, and we need to go in a completely different direction. But I thought the backdrop of the Ryan budget today gives all of us a good and necessary contrast. And you mentioned it, 7 out of 10 Americans support raising the minimum wage. As many other popular issues in this country, we have a Congress that's decided in a very hypocritical, dictatorial way what the American people want and don't want, despite the fact that the American people are telling us what they want. And with regards to Social Security, they want to strengthen it and preserve it. With regard to the minimum wage, they want to raise it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Representative Grijalva, for putting this in context. That was very enlightening. Our second speaker is Midge Slater, a retired staff representative in Iowa for the Communications Workers of America. Since retirement in 2009, Ms. Slater has been working as field staff for the Iowa Alliance for Retired Americans, helping to build a new organization into a voice of seniors in Iowa. She works every day with seniors who rely on Social Security to be able to afford food and vital medications. Midge?
Thank you very much. Recently, we have published a booklet of senior interviews called A Snapshot, the purpose of which is to share with Iowa legislators the Elder Index, information we obtained through a grant from Wider Opportunities for Women, and what it tells about economic security for Iowans. We have data for all 99 counties in the state, and included in this estimated cost per county are the major items of housing, food, transportation, health care, and miscellaneous costs, and presents an elder index more in line with actual costs for seniors than the federal poverty level, which is too low. While looking at the difference between 2011 and the update done in 2012, we discovered that costs increased by 6%. That, if you will remember, was during the period when we received no increase in Social Security. And we believe our stories, regardless of work history, show the problems faced by Iowa seniors and probably seniors across the country. The people we interviewed were identified through partnerships with agencies in central Iowa who hire retirees that must continue working to make ends meet. And in those jobs, they are also paid minimum wage. Of particular interest was the story of Linda Stockbauer because she has the lowest Social Security income of all interviewed. She was not able to be with us today, which is unfortunate because no one tells Linda's story as good as she. She worked most of her life, frequently 7 days a week, except for the brief time she stayed home to take care of her children. Her jobs were minimum wage, and that reflects in what she is now receiving as Social Security. And incidentally, that is $582 a month. She lives in city public housing, so 30% of her income goes for rent. Recent SNAP decreases have taken her from the $25 shown in her story to $15 a month. Linda had to quit her post-retirement job because it involved traveling around the area as a senior companion, and she could not afford the expense of gas and car upkeep of the beater she drives. She recently made a quote at one of our events in which she said, "I'd like to challenge some of these senators and congressmen, whoever, to live on $582 a month with a car that you're afraid to go 2 blocks up the street for groceries because you're afraid it might break down." Increases in minimum wage and Social Security would help tremendously when considering future economic security for seniors, particularly women who are affected disproportionately because of their lower wages and family care time. We are extremely grateful to Social Security Works for their reports that we have introduced in Iowa for this information. This connection between raising the minimum wage and retiree economic security, unfortunately, is not an obvious connection. Why do senior organizations care about this issue? Why is Linda willing to stump for us? Because Social Security is based on what you earn. And unfortunately, at a recent press conference in Iowa, the connection was not made, even when it was spelled out. So Linda has committed to continue to tell her story and to allow others of us to say it on her behalf. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Midge. The federal minimum wage is lower today than it was in 1968. It's $7.25 today versus $9.39 in today's dollars back in 1968. This 23% decline in the purchasing power of the minimum wage over the past 4 decades is part of the broader decline of wages of the bottom fifth of earners. Their share of the total income pie has declined by 24% since 1968, by a quarter. At the same time, the nation as a whole has become much wealthier. Average wages have increased in real terms by 24% over this span. Restoring the minimum wage to near its 1968 level and then indexing it to inflation, as the Fair Minimum Wage Act of Senator Tom Harkin and Representative George Miller proposes to do, would be an important first step toward restoring some balance to the distribution of income gains in this country. It would also strengthen low-wage workers' retirement security and improve Social Security's finances in the process. Social Security is a wage insurance program. It replaces a portion of a family's income when a worker is unable to work due to old age, disability, or death. When workers earn less, they pay less into Social Security and hence get lower benefits out of Social Security when they and their family need them. Social Security is critical to all workers' retirement security. 2/3 of senior households today get half or more of their income from Social Security. But it is even more critical to low-income workers' retirement security. 1/3 of senior households get 90% or more of their income from Social Security. When workers earn less due to an eroded minimum wage, they pay less into Social Security and have lower benefits in retirement. And Social Security provides not only retirement security, but disability and life insurance protections as well. As with retirement benefits, Social Security's disability and survivor's benefits are based on career average wages. Higher wages lead to higher benefits. Unemployment insurance benefits are also proportional to previous earnings. All of these insurance protections, which are designed to replace lost income for a family when a breadwinner is unable to work, would be enhanced by a higher minimum wage. Since nearly 9 in 10 of those who would be affected by the Fair Minimum Wage Act are adults, and more than a quarter have children, restoring the minimum wage would significantly strengthen the economic security of America's low-income families. Moreover, erosion of the minimum wage and the broader trend of weak and unequal wage growth since the late 1960s has caused about a third of Social Security's projected long-term funding shortfall. Restoring the minimum wage and indexing it to inflation would improve Social Security's finances by increasing the wages of the 28 million workers directly affected, who would pay payroll taxes on an estimated $35 billion in additional earnings by 2016. A core American value is that people who work hard and play by the rules should not have to live or retire in poverty. Today, a lifetime minimum wage worker with a 40-year work history receives a Social Security benefit of only $686 a month if he or she retires at 62, as most workers, often for health reasons, have to do, or $916 a month if he or she waits to retire until age 66. In both cases, the retirement income is below the poverty level. In an economy in which adults and parents are increasingly reliant on low-wage jobs, restoring the minimum wage is a modest but critical step toward lifting low-income families out of poverty and enhancing their retirement security, as well as their life, disability, and unemployment insurance protections. No other anti-poverty policy targeting low-wage workers has these ancillary social insurance benefits. And contrary to such policies, raising the minimum wage would not only spare taxpayers any additional expense, it would actually reduce government subsidies of low-wage employers and modestly improve Social Security's finances in the process.
Yeah, this is Raúl. I forgot to, I think, Midge, to thank her for her comments, and Ben, you as well, because, especially the Alliance, and at least in my district and in the state of Arizona, have been very, very active and held numerous events to keep the issue of protecting and enhancing Social Security alive. And I just wanted to thank the Alliance for all the work they're doing across this country, and obviously in Iowa as well.
And we greatly appreciate your leadership, Representative Grijalva. It's critical.
And I thought the points that Social Security made about the Ryan budget was a good one, in that it destroys jobs, therefore impacts Social Security contributions, and that by ending Medicare as we know it and shifting it over to a voucher program, you also shift costs onto seniors, which cuts into the Social Security benefits, because then there's an additional cost that has to be borne by the individual and borne by that senior, that retiree, that person on disability, that family who are dependent because of the loss of a spouse. And I think that those points that you're making and tying those together is something that all of us should sound more and more, because there is a very direct link that doesn't get talked about enough.
Thank you very much. Lacey, do we have any questions?
I guess my question would be, going forward, how are you going to track? Have you given any thought? It goes to either Social Security Works. By the way, this is Richard Eskow, R.J. Eskow, but with the 0 Hour. But have you given any thought to how to keep this in the public attention, so if people are losing Social Security benefits with every week they're out of work, or every week their wages are inadequate? And is there a way, maybe a bulletin board or flash updates or something, to let people know, X millions of dollars of benefits were lost this week because action wasn't taken, that kind of thing? Has any thought been given to that? And by the way, thanks for your great work on this.
Sure. Social Security Works hasn't planned anything on that thus far, but it's a good idea. And obviously, we're working on Capitol Hill to push minimum wage legislation through, and there is some movement on that in Congress.
Yeah, if I may, this is Raúl. it's partial answer to the question about making it a central point. I thought your point's well taken. The call. We're gonna. I think today Eastern Time about 1 o'clock. We're going to have Progressive Caucus is going to have a press conference in front of the House Budget Committee, over which Ryan rules, where he's talking about his budget, and certainly I intend to make that linkage one of the points in my discussion, and I believe other members of the caucus, as we contrast what Ryan's doing with the Progressive Caucus budget, which deals with the deficit, but also deals with generating revenue from people now that are not contributing their fair share to the economy and to the nation. But my point being that every opportunity I think that I get and other members get is to make that linkage, because I think it's very important, and that the constituency that protects Medicare and Social Security needs to understand the linkage between that and minimum wage, and I think we just need to keep saying it as often as we can.
And will we, those of us who can't be there, will we be able to get a copy of your remarks?
I usually don't know what I'm going to say till I have to say it, so it's but whatever scripted, I'm sure we'll be glad to send it to you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
This is Midge, and I would like to answer that question also from a state perspective. We asked the same question, and there is a progressive group in Iowa that is going to take the information across the state to major locations with press conferences and educationals regarding the link between Social Security and the increased minimum wage, along with other issues, such as small businesses who are willing to pay an increased minimum wage. So we're trying to link all the issues together and do realize we have to spread it across the state. It's a very good question.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think the point there, which you mentioned in the story about Linda, Midge, is that if you work for a lifetime at minimum wage, you get a sub-poverty level Social Security benefit, right? Which in Linda's case was even lower because probably she didn't have the full 40-year work history because she took care of her children for a couple of years. But if you're lucky enough to have the full 40-year work history as a minimum wage worker and you retire at 62, you get a benefit of $686 a month. So that's
right.
A very direct link.
Yes, it is. And also, it dawned on me as I was sitting here that the years in which she worked were the years in which that minimum wage at the 1968 level was being
right.
paid. So.
Good point, yeah. So it'll be worse down the road.
Absolutely.
All right. It doesn't seem like we have any more questions at this time. So with that, we will conclude today's call.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. This is very useful and very helpful on clarifying this issue.